is about to start, and Paul Tracy is extremely good on under these conditions. Watch Zanardi and Tracy, and don't take your eye off Greg Moore in the blue car in row 2. They're looking for the green flag. There it flies out our window here. Green flag is underway. Zanardi has the advantage.
Good start by Vassar. Tracy pulls up nice and straight. In fact, they've maintained grid order in the first 4 positions as they get through the first chicane.
I just saw an accident. Michael Andretti got a smack in the rear end. Michael Andretti did get hit. But Zanardi clearly now in the lead. Paul Tracy a second. Look at Parker Johnstone trying to fight off Scott Pruett.
Greg Moore just covering his tracks. Parker Johnstone down the inside. Scott Pruett there. Mauricio Gugelmin. With the exception of Andretti getting a tap, it looks like it's been a relatively clean start in the first 4 corners, heading down the back straight for the first time to the Dime S's, approaching 270 kilometres an hour. Ribeiro making a move. Here comes Pruett down the inside of Parker Johnstone.
Gets tight when you get down to the braking zone. Oh, he hits him! Scott Pruett hits the back of Parker Johnstone. Johnstone, how did he catch that at this early stage when the tyres are barely up to temperature?
That was a very, very good save and a big moment for Parker Johnstone in the Team Cool Green Reynard. Wow, there he is.
Did he do any damage? Yes, he did. He's got a puncture. Parker Johnstone has a puncture in that left rear tyre. Look at the gap now, so Pruett gets through eventually.
He'll be on the radio. The crew will be preparing for Johnstone's arrival. This is a tragic way to start the race for him. He's losing valuable track time.
Qualified so well. He was 6th fastest on the 3rd row of the grid, but now Zanardi clearly in the lead. Paul Tracy, that's the Goodyear tyres versus the Firestone tyres. Firestone on Zanardi, Goodyear on Paul Tracy's. But Parker Johnstone will be our first visitor to the pit lane following that smack from Scott Pruett.
Standing lap time for Alex Zanardi, 1:42.2. 281 kilometres per hour, our laser speed readout. Tracy in hot pursuit, 0.7 of a second behind. Jimmy Vassar in 3rd, Greg Moore in 4th, then Scott Pruett. That's an excellent start. Mark Blundell behind, then Mauricio Gugelmin.
There's a yellow flag. Somebody must be off the road. We just saw the yellow flag at the top of the picture.
Parker's gone into the pit lane as we expected. Now what has happened there with Tracy? Oh, chaos.
Gilles de Ferran's in the middle of it. There is a full course yellow. Gilles de Ferran's car is destroyed.
Michel Jourdain
is in there. Paul Jasper is in there.
Arndt Meyer, I think I saw wobbling around the back. That's a frightful mess at the front of de Ferran's car. This is the Derek Walker Valvoline entry. Now, I saw Paul Tracy in trouble too. There is debris everywhere. This is going to mean a major delay. A major delay. Parker Johnstone has been in and out. What has happened here? Whoa.
Oh, there's something big going on here that we haven't seen yet, because there is debris and wheels from somebody else's car. Who is... Oh, is that Christian Fittipaldi? Well, there is a serious crash.
Michael Andretti just finding a way through the pack. Behind him is Andre Ribeiro.
That was a red car.
Christian Fittipaldi.
Christian. The brand new Swift car, it looks very heavily damaged at the front. Christian Fittipaldi is unable to get out from that vehicle, which means his feet must be trapped down in the front side of that monocoque. So a disaster at this early stage for Christian Fittipaldi, who went so well here all weekend. Qualified 9th fastest, and now he's in trouble.
Was in 8th position at the start of that 2nd lap.
Red flag, red flag.
Red flag. We're going to have to stop this race. The race will be stopped. There is far too much damage. Christian Fittipaldi, you see how heavily damaged the front of that carbon fiber monocoque is.
Here's another McDonald's replay. Let's see if we can pick up just exactly what happened here. Whoa, Christian Fittipaldi strikes that outside wall very, very heavily. Now, that was at the Sunbelt chicane. And in fact, it was on the exit of the Sunbelt chicane. That is a very heavy impact. Now, what role has Gilles de Ferran played? Damage to the front of his car?
Look at this. Look at the pictures we have here of Christian Fittipaldi's Swift just absolutely destroyed after an impact possibly with Gilles de Ferran initially. But there is a destroyed racing car, which gives you an idea of the violence.
On board with Christian Fittipaldi. Does it tell us that he's been hit from behind?
I wondered if Gilles de Ferran hit Christian Fittipaldi.
Now this is near the pit exit. This is on the main straight, just past our commentary point.
What's the impact?
Goodness me. Okay, this is the approach to the Sunbelt chicane. Now it all starts to make sense.
It's only conjecture, but Gilles de Ferran was right in the middle of that. Both of Gilles de Ferran's front wheels were broken. Yes, indeed, he did.
Yes.
Neil, he interlocked wheels with Fittipaldi.
And this is on board with Michael Andretti now trying to get through the debris. Look at this, what decisions to make. That is a frightful and scary impact for Christian Fittipaldi. We hope he is okay.
And that is a speed, Neil, of what, in excess of 250 just Ks?
Well and truly, the speed of the cars at the finish line beacon, I got a printout yesterday, 290 kilometres an hour.
Well, when you get an accident like this and you see the type of debris, the only thing I can tell you is it looks like an airline accident, because there is so much debris. They had no option but to wave the red flag. And Carl Haas, the owner of this team, the instigator of this new Swift chassis, the design project started just a year ago. And 9 months after announcing it, they actually had the car testing. It came out hugely successful at Homestead with a win. But this is a sight no racing driver likes to see, because Christian Fittipaldi is still trapped inside that racing car. We know that he is conscious. We saw him talking to the safety workers, and they are the very best in the business. And there's Gilles de Ferran's car. I do believe he was directly involved, Neil, with that incident, and those front wheels tell a story, because I think the left one or the right one might have got broken on with contact with Christian Fittipaldi first.
Yes, it's difficult to know from the angles we've seen so far, Derek, just who was doing what to who, but obviously Gilles de Ferran has played a major role in this incident, and Christian Fittipaldi has come off second best, and the kart safety crew currently working on the front of the Swift racing car chassis, just trying to extract Christian safely and calmly from this chassis.
There's Christian.
The second impact seems to have done a lot of the damage there.
Remember, the speed is more than 250 clicks. Serious impact. There's the second one. Look at the car smash into those concrete walls.
The first one was violent. The first one was just horrendous. Goodness me. On Smales.
Shocked people behind me in the Christian Fittipaldi team tried to get to Carl Haas. At the moment, not a good time to talk to him. The news from race control is, because we didn't complete a lap, there was a red flag as cars still came round. There is going to be a complete restart to the race. The drivers will not be allowed, however, to refuel, we're told. Paul Tracy, meantime, with some damage to his car, is trying to get a backup car ready for the restart.
Thank you, John. Christian Fittipaldi about to be put on the stretcher. They have freed him from the pedal box area. Christian has yet to win.
Car, which was my primary car, and we know that car is good.
Such an unsettling first lap with Christian as well. What does it do to a driver?
Well, I don't know anything. I haven't seen what happened. I've only heard there was a big crash. I'm concerned about what we have to do to get back in the race so we can try to win the race.
Yeah, well, I'm standing in front of the Walker pit here. Behind me is Gilles de Ferran's spare car. The panic is they can't find Gilles. Somebody said he wasn't hurt in any way, but they've had no message back. He's not at the medical centre. But maybe if it was Gilles' fault, or he just hit him up the back and felt a little bit guilty about it, then maybe he would have gone with Christian to the medical centre. You can see here that it's all going on. Right, we've got Gilles. Let me see if I can have a quick word. Gilles, what happened?
It's a very unfortunate incident. I mean, I was trying to overtake Christian, and I ended up touching, I think he probably didn't see me, and, I touched the wall and his side all at the same time, and when that happened, we both lost control and had a massive accident. I just hope he's all right.
Yeah, I know. It looked very, very scary. Anyway, I'll leave you alone and pray to God it's okay. Thank you very much, Gilles. Such a bad start. Tell us what happened.
I just held my own on the start. I was running third and exiting the second chicane. Tracy hit the tires and bent his suspension as it collapsed going down into the A&A hotel corner, and so I was in second, and then I'm told there was a big wreck and they red flagged it, but that was past, the wreck was past, everybody had finished a lap, and from where I come from, when you finish one lap, the race starts, but for some reason, they're going to call it a non-start and then start over.
Yeah, and what it does is bottle everybody up into the first corner again.
Yeah, and it allows Tracy to get into his backup car, and anybody else, they can do whatever they want, so it's a big break for Tracy and the Penske team, but I don't know about you, Barry. I mean, as long as I've been racing, if you complete one lap, the race has started, and somebody needs to make a good explanation to me on why they're going to call it and restart another race.
I never did understand officialdom.
Yeah. The bottom line is they can do whatever they want.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Jimmy.
All right, Barry.
Defending Will.
Michael, you got hit up the back of the start.
Yeah, it just went to a dead stop and somebody hit me in the back, but hopefully it'll be all right.
And you were saying that they're going to restart the race now and start it as a fresh race.
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's right. You know, we did all complete a lap, so I'm not sure it should be a complete restart, but that's what they're going to do.
And the effect of making a complete restart, why does that disadvantage you?
Well, for one, I was up to about 7th position already, and now I got to go back to 12th or whatever, so that hurts us. And also, it just bunches everybody up together again and makes it a little more dangerous.
It gives it another chance for the same sort of things to happen.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mike.
Gilles de Ferran's damaged motor vehicle being brought back into the pits. It has a tarpaulin on it because there is oil leaking from underneath it, and to prevent any damage on the track. You can see most of the damage to de Ferran's car happened on the left-hand side. It's terrible when you see a motor car come back like this, Derek. Front right-hand wheel, all at odds. Have a look in here and you can see the wishbones bent out of shape from the impact with Christian Fittipaldi's car.
Alex, complete disaster for a first lap.
Yeah, for me, quite egoistically speaking, was good. I was in a good situation, was first, and in a street circuit it's always very difficult. You know, the first lap you always expect something strange to happen. And it did happen, so I'm happy that all the guys walked away with no problems, and it's just a shame that we had to stop the race.
Well, that's the thing, the start is so important, as all the drivers know, and you put your big effort in and it worked out, no problems at the chicane. So what do you reckon for the second start? Same again?
Well, it wasn't a fantastic start, but you know, when you're first, you can't improve your position. You can't gain anything else because you're already first, and the only thing you want to do is turn safely at turn 1 in front of everybody. That's what I'm going to try to do again. I'm starting from the best spot to do that. Then if I can set up my pace, which I think it will be, I hope it's going to be strong enough to stay up in front, and then we'll see from there.
And how did the car feel on full tanks and everything?
The car is okay. Car is okay, and only question mark is tire wear and fuel consumption, but I think we should be all right.
The driver's not so bad.
Driver's not too bad. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
A very relaxed Alex Zanardi. Fittipaldi.
Now remember, de Ferran is on the left-hand side of Fittipaldi. He hits him. He's out of control now.
Yeah. You know what's happened there, Derek? The approach to... Oh, that is a terrible shunt. Here's on board with Michael. Look further up ahead, right up on the horizon. Here it is, see de Ferran, the white car, the back of the car is white. He tried to go down the left side. Okay. The approach to this corner, which is a long, lazy right, requires you to run parallel to the wall very, very temporarily. De Ferran obviously had better corner exit speed and was going to make a move on Fittipaldi, who didn't know he was there, didn't see him in the mirror. Christian has moved across to the appropriate racing line, not knowing that Gilles was there. The two of them have interlocked and has turned Fittipaldi across the nose of de Ferran, who's struck the wall. That's Andre Ribeiro from Tasman Motorsports.
And something that was a reasonable effort at making a pass suddenly turns into a bit of a disaster for Gilles de Ferran, who really has got himself involved in quite a few first lap incidents. Now, speaking of incidents, Neil has kept an unofficial record here of the number of incidents on that one lap alone, and it's quite incredible, Neil.
It is amazing. I've just been scratching a couple of them down, Derek. We had Michael Andretti getting tangled up in the Sunbelt chicane at the beginning of the race, so they'd only travelled a couple of 100 metres. Now, there's more activity down in the pit lane. Let's go down to John.
High drama, in fact, down here in the pit lane, Neil. Quite a number of the teams are changing to their backup cars, as this will be a complete restart. However, there's some confusion amongst the teams themselves as to whether one lap was officially completed. If so, some of the teams are saying that the other teams shouldn't be allowed to change cars. In fact, the Brahma team, the Pat Patrick team of Scott Pruett, has now marched past me straight up to race control to see Dennis Swan up and Wally Dallin back in race control to ascertain exactly the situation and therefore perhaps enter a protest. Barry Sheen.
Joe, how long have you been a motorsport fan?
Well, I think like any boy, it's been since I've been about that big.
When did you get involved with Chip first year?
It was 3 years ago, and I was fortunate. Actually, Chip grew up about 7 miles from me back in Pennsylvania. I'm just fortunate he let me be associated with the team. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, the point about the motorsport thing is so completely different from your sporting life that it's very rare you get an athlete that is involved with motorsport.
Well, I think one of the things is about it is I've always wanted to get in the car and go fast, and I enjoy fast cars, and I wish I'd started a long time ago and like to give that a try sometime, but not this lifetime now.
What about, have you ever driven one of these things?
No, I haven't. I'd love to, but they're too expensive.
Too expensive, and probably you're too big and healthy to get in there.
I don't know. I might be able to squeeze in there if they let me.
I really appreciate it. And have you enjoyed your time on the Gold Coast?
Yes, we have. My wife and I have been here with our 4 kids since last Friday, and we've had a blast. And they're not ready to go home yet, but unfortunately, back to school.
Will you come back?
Oh, yeah, definitely. You bet.
You're welcome, Joe. Thanks very much.
This is the Honda hairpin there. Zanardi will move to the left. Paul Tracy down to the right. Now, Zanardi pulled one over Tracy the last time. Can Tracy do the same thing over Zanardi this time? Look at Greg Moore in the blue car, right behind Paul Tracy, trying to go with him. Oh, Tracy gets the jump.
Oh, the green flag, and Zanardi put one right over Tracy. That time they played cat and mouse all the way to the line, and Zanardi did the business. Locks the front right just a little over the bumps.
Very, very difficult on these opening laps on these street circuits. There is precious little room to fit all of these 27 cars down through it. But Paul Tracy is second. Jimmy Vassar got a very poor start, and Greg Moore's ahead of him in third.
It appeared to me, looking into the background of the shots, that they all got through cleanly. This is Pruett up the inside of Blundell. Successful move again. Zanardi just nips a brake going into the left-hand turn onto the back straight. That's Bartercard turn.
So how hard do the leading drivers run? You can see they run absolutely flathead. Zanardi locks up those front brakes. They took a big gamble on Zanardi's car for this race. Monon, his engineer, said, I made a big change to the diff. I tightened it up 15%. He says, I can do stuff like that because Zanardi is so good, he can adapt his driving style. The reason they did it, because they fear wheel spin.
Lap 1 of 65. This has been a restart of the 7th running of Indy Carnival on the Gold Coast. We look at Parker Johnstone just sliding through that high-speed chicane at Foster's. Who's up the inside here? It's Gugelman underneath Parker Johnstone. Scott Pruett goes with him. Mark Blundell behind. Zanardi, Tracy, Moore, Vassar. That's 1 to 4. 5 is Gugelman, 6 is Pruett, 7 Johnston, then Blundell. Rahal is next.
Parker Johnston way too tentative on that early lap, went 2 positions down on that one corner when Gugelman put the squeeze on him down the inside. Suddenly, Scott Pruett followed him through.
Lap 2, into the braking area. This was all, or the scene of all the drama just on an hour ago. Standing lap for Zanardi when he recorded 286 kilometres an hour on the straight was a 142.5. He's got a 1 second margin on Paul Tracy. Greg Moore is 2.6 behind and Vassar 3.7 behind. So they've actually spread out surprisingly at this early stage. But Pruett is the man on the move as we go on board with Michael Andretti. That was the tyres on the left there at the apex of that dime turn that Paul Tracy collected at the beginning of the first race.
So he's chasing Bobby Rahal. Bobby Rahal is 9th, Michael Andretti is 10th. So Andretti has made up some positions. He's made up 2. Well, made have one really, because Christian Fittipaldi's already out of there, but Michael Andretti chasing down Bobby Rahal. There he is, the sister car to Christian's that got destroyed in that earlier start.
Most successful man in IndyCar competition with 36 wins, the man that leads the championship in 1997. Let's listen to the beautiful music of this Ford engine.
Ford engine revs to 14,500 revs. Catching somebody is one thing. Making a pass here is something very different. Michael Andretti, known as one of the most aggressive drivers ever to set foot into an Indy car.
Michael using a long second gear, not looking to make a lot of unnecessary gear changes with short ratios. A lot of the teams opting to use a ratio combination that uses only 5 of an available 6 speeds in the gearboxes of these cars. Looking down from the Whitman's lightship, and there is Alex Zanardi, our race leader on lap 3, from Paul Tracy in second position. The blue and white car for players is Greg Moore. He's 3.8 seconds behind. Then it's Jimmy Vasser, Mauricio Gugelmin, Scott Pruett, Parker Johnston, Mark Blundell, Bobby Rahal, and Michael Andretti is 10th.
First and second. So spectacular during qualifying. Yesterday, Tracy had the pole till the dying seconds. Zanardi yanked it away from him. Firestone tires on Zanardi's car, Goodyear tires on the Penske, both on the soft compound. About 15 to 20 laps in, they think these cars might go to oversteer as Scott Pruett begins to bear down on Gugelmin, the man who missed most of the first qualifying session on Friday, and in 4 laps qualified 4th in the opening round.
And with tyres coming up to temperature, how much difference does 35 gallons of methanol make to the performance of these cars? Well, it's around about 4 seconds. Their first flying lap was a 1:40 for Zanardi. Keep in mind they qualified in the high 35s. And look at the pressure now that Pruett is applying. Let's have a look at the top 5 after lap 2 for Hahn Ice. It's Zanardi, Tracy, Moore, Vasser and Gugelmin.
And Gugelmin has his mirrors full of Scott Pruett. Pruett looks to be faster. Pruett is on the harder tires. The longer this race goes, the more advantage Pruett will have. This car was Bozel's spare car. Pruett blew up his own engine. Early in yesterday's qualifying session, had to jump into Bozel's car, and he was just spectacular.
Pruett has got a very good and deep understanding of how to get performance out of a car around this track, Derek. He's been 4th, he's been 3rd, he's been 2nd. We're looking at Greg Moore and Jimmy Vasser, incidentally. He seems to have a very good knowledge of understanding how to get the most out of the car and compromising aerodynamics between speed and cornering grip and getting the car to ride over the bumps. Paul Tracy, position 2.
Whenever you look at Tracy, anything can happen. I mean, he is absolutely like a hand grenade with the pin pulled all the time. Anything can happen. If only he could control that immense talent he has, he could be champion quite easily. But he is quite likely to throw this thing into the bushes at any time. And we saw earlier when he broke the left front suspension off. But he is the man now trying to take the challenge to Zanardi, who throws off one of the rip-offs.
They have a clear piece of film over the front of their visors, Derek, as you know, and when the drivers collect oil or debris or bugs on the front of the windshield on their visor, they can pull the tear-offs away and flick them away, and that's what you saw disappearing out the back of the car then. Unusual for the leader to be pulling a tear-off off very early in the race. Very, very bumpy around this circuit, and I think getting bumpier year by year.
This is the S's down to the Honda chicane. It's second gear. As soon as you straighten this thing up, you just blast all the way down through the sequential gearbox. We saw the speed traps earlier, 286 Ks, and this is not the fastest part. Oh, 290. They're pulling 300 during qualifying down the back straight.
Zanardi is pushing very hard. Just as he started to turn into the Sunbelt chicane, he had the rear brakes ever so gently locked. The car was really sliding around. So we're watching the Italian, Alex Zanardi, formerly of Formula One, earmarked for the championship at the end of 1996 because of his brilliant performances late in the season. After lap 4, the Hahn Ice top 5 is Zanardi, Tracy, Moore. Behind Moore, it's Vasser, Gugelmin, Pruett, Johnston, Blundell, Rahal and Andretti. Jimmy Vasser on board, left-hander at Bartercard turn, heading up the back straight, second gear, third gear, sequential shift, flat shifting. There's a little ignition cut cutout. When they pull on the lever, it just arrests the spark temporarily, releases the load on the gearbox, enables the gear to be selected. Downshift now to the Dime S's. Tries to avoid the curbing. Second, third, fourth. Big. What's the speed here? 270 kilometres an hour. Hard on the brakes for the Foster chicane. Down 2 gears. Not pounding the car over the curbs in the race like they do in qualifying. 240 kilometres an hour. Hard on the brakes again, left hand. Second gear, Conrad Jupiter's turn. Easy on the rear tyres. Don't feed the 800 horsepower in too quick. Bumpy stuff through the left and right hand sequence of the MCISs. Still second gear. Speed through here. 192 kilometres an hour up to third gear. On the brakes, back to second. Not locking the brakes, carefully apply the power on the hairpin. Second, third, fourth, use all of the wall, or all of the track up to the edge of the wall. Fourth, fifth, and potentially sixth. I'm not sure how Vassar has geared the car. This is the man in third position, sorry, fourth position. I will get it right eventually. It's Zanardi, Tracy, Moore, Vassar, and Gugelman.
Jimmy Vassar, who was so good towards the end of last year, not because of his speed, but because of his consistency. He knew to win the championship, I had to finish almost every single race, and he did that and became the champion.
Here we are, lap 5 of 65. Zanardi leads by 1.7. Tracy, Moore, Vassar, Gugelman make up the top 5. Then Pruett, Johnston, Blundell, Bobby Rahal getting in the top 10. We'll be back with more action soon from Indy Carnival.
Well, Paul Tracy was all over the back of Alex Zanardi, but we have another serious incident, serious enough to cause another full course yellow. But Paul Tracy had caught, here's the incident right here.
Is that Golder
Salas down inside. Brian Herta gets himself out of control, loses it, locks those rear brakes.
Skipped up over the top of the curb. Herta doing everything to avoid. He actually unclamps the brakes to get the car to turn again and gets away with it. Golder Salas very lucky not to hang that car on the wall, and there's been a black flag shown to car number 34. That's the Dale Coyne entry of Paul Jasper, Formula Atlantic driver from 1996. I think he finished third in the series. Golder Salas from Brazil, the Whitman's light ship shot, showing us from above that he did no damage. And he was very lucky to get away with that, although I would suggest that he has 4 flat-spotted tyres. John Smales.
And concern for Parker Johnston as well. He's picked up some paper in his radiator. Kim Green, any concerns at all about the engine overheating?
Not at this point. We have a live-time telemetry from the race car to the pit showing our temperatures. The temperatures are running at the same level as we've been all weekend, so at this point it's not causing a problem.
Here's Galter Salas, who did such a good job in qualifying, locks up those rear brakes, skids across the grass, harmlessly down the escape rope, but Brian Herta could not turn into the corner. Bozell manages to escape all this, as does Richie Hearn in the red and white Lola. So as soon as I gather up our Brazilian friend here, we can go back to racing. Now, we had mentioned it, Zanardi seems to be in trouble when this thing goes back to full racing speed, because Paul Tracy was all over him just before that yellow came out.
Scott Pruett, the mover in the field, up to 6th position. So the order at the moment is Zanardi, Tracy, Moore, Vassar, Gugelman. There's Pruett on screen. Parker Johnston 7th with a question mark. Is there a problem? Then Mark Blundell, Michael Andretti and Bobby Rahal creeps into the top 10. But no doubt that Alex Zanardi is under pressure. See, we're under caution at the moment. The cars have been brought under control whilst we get Golder Salas back in business. And it would appear to me as though Zanardi was having a lot of trouble getting off the slow corners, Derek.
And as soon as Tracy has that little carrot dangle in front of him, he begins to pounce. Now, Tracy's a wild man, so anything could happen. Greg Moore takes advantage, draws right up behind Tracy, and of course Jimmy Vassar right in line behind Greg Moore. So this sprint is about to start all over again as soon as they can gather up Galter Salas, because there was a question mark as to whether he was able to fire that engine up or not to get himself out of the way. So everybody slows down a little bit, and we'll be back with more as soon as this double yellow flag is over. But Zanardi still leads. He's under serious pressure from Tracy. Greg Moore gets a grandstand view of everything. The champion says, I'll let everything settle down. And Gugelmin is 5th. Pruett 6th. Parker Johnstone 7th. Blundell is hanging on well, as is Michael Andretti. And Bobby Rahal will be back. Welcome back to the Indy Carnival. The fireworks are about to start because they will go green at the end of this lap. There have been 3 men in the pits: P.J. Jones, Patrick Carpentier, and Galter Sala is elected to make a pit stop to change tires.
Yeah, Derek, I've just spoken to Alex Zanardi's engineer. No problems with the car. Everything is running superbly, and they were just a little bit worried that Tracy was getting a little bit over-anxious and might whack him up the backside. Apart from that, everything is fine with his car.
Well, Barry, he is quite likely to do that. But let's just see how good his car is. Look at Greg Moore, almost gets a smack from Tracy. But Tracy's going to be brave down into the Sunbelt chicane.
Oh, Tracy's posturing for a run on the inside, but Zanardi covers him by simply maintaining race line and out-braking him. Oh, who was that? Michael Andretti getting carved up. Lost a lot of ground in the Sunbelt chicane just on the exit. There's Andretti.
2 into 1 won't go, but he did pass Bobby Rahal. He was trailing Rahal for so long, and he did manage to get by him. Now, let these laps run, and after about 3 or 4 or 5 laps, let's just see whether Zanardi does seem to get into that same trouble or not, and can Paul Tracy claw his way up behind that Honda power, Paul Tracy being powered by the new Mercedes-Benz engine.
Zanardi again locking brakes in those slower 90-degree turns, and Parker Johnstone is very lethargic. Oh, we've got a problem with Michel Jourdain Jr. and Richie Hearn in the Della Penna car, the Lola. That's a local yellow flag being waved at this stage. Let's see what happens here on the McDonald's replay. We'll get some sort of an idea. Now, here we are. Jourdain just turns it round on the rear brake. That's the dirty side of the track. The car won't pull up, and we've gone full course yellow again as we look at the McDonald's replay, and Richie Hearn, an innocent bystander in that because the Mexican was all over the road.
So we have to gather up the youngest man in the field here, Michel Jourdain. He is only 20 years of age, comes with backing from Mexico, but Zanardi continues to lead, and Paul Tracy is right there, beginning to sniff the lead of this race. Greg Moore, and then Vassar and Gugelmin in that top 5. Richie Hearn there, as you mentioned, you get yourself in all sorts of trouble, and De Ferran elects to come down the pit lane because whatever's wrong with his car, he doesn't like it. He thinks it's better and faster to stop. And Alonso Jr., you see him, he also peels in. Now, Jr. started on the soft tires. They said they probably will go to the harder tires as soon as they can make the stop. This is a tactical move by Alonso Jr. because he was 15th. He'll be right at the back of the field now, but remember, when everybody makes their first pit stops, Al Jr. can vault all the way to the front of the field. This might be a very good tactical move.
Good, quick, clean stops for both teams, the Walker team and Team Penske. Incidentally, the pit lane speed limit that's active here, 60 miles an hour, as you see the kart safety truck on the right. This is the dime turn, the southern end of the circuit as we look over the top of Jimmy Vassar. Richie Hearn has come to the pits, obviously, after his moment. And you can hear the cars coming down on an electronic speed limiter. They pop and they bang as they come down the lane at 100 kilometres an hour, 60 miles an hour, to maintain a safe speed in the pits for the crews.
Left front wing on Richie Hearn's car is broken. They're going to have to pull the complete nose section off that. Maybe they'll just replace the front wing. But Alonso Jr., he's in trouble.
Left rear.
Well, well, well. Roger Penske's team possibly made a very, very serious blunder. I don't know whether he can make it all the way around or not.
Obviously, the wheel hasn't located correctly on the hub, and it has now come off. If it didn't actually sit up on the drive pegs, they may well have thought they had tension with the nut, but if the wheel then shifted or the hub shifted within the wheel, he's out of business.
If it was a front wheel, you could still drive it back because these cars are so stiffly sprung. But a complete new wing section going on to Richie Hearn's car, and Alonso Jr.'s car is on fire. There is a fire. It's only a small fire, unburnt fuel in that exhaust system. What a disaster. The wheel nut's gone, so obviously the wheel nut was the first thing to peel off. There's the drive pegs. You can just see them glint in the sunshine.
If you look at that ventilated disc rotor on the left-hand side of the car, you can see little, well, you could, silver drive pegs that the wheel locates on. Now, in the hurry sometimes in a pit stop...
There's that familiar face, Neil. Sorry, Steve Albee. Dr. Steve Albee, we saw him comment earlier on Christian Fittipaldi. He is the first man to stick his nose into the cockpit. So when you're in serious trouble, you have a recognizable face. But look at this.
McDonald's replay tells the story. The wheel hasn't been fitted correctly. The nut has ultimately come off, and this is another angle, and you can see this turning into a nice old disaster for Al Jr.
And Roger Penske can see these pictures at the same time you can, because he has our Channel 10 feed live in every one of these pits, so they see these disastrous pictures. Barry Sheen, you're down there?
Yeah, I've just checked with Jules DeFerran's team, and he thought he had a puncture because the thing was rolling around a bit, but he's come in and changed the tyres, and they've checked it, and it wasn't, so maybe it's something else, but he thought it was a puncture.
Well, this is more than a puncture here. What a disaster. Al Unser Jr. came here and struggled so badly. He sees his teammate qualify on the front row of the grid, which puts more pressure on driver. Yesterday, they went back and checked the setup of the car. A front shock absorber had gone bad. They changed it. He was happy this morning in the warm-up. And now they pull a tactical move. Could have been brilliant. Has been for Roger Penske many times in the past. And suddenly, a mistake in the pits, and it's all thrown away for Al Unser Jr. For the top 10, Zanardi, Tracy, Greg Moore, Jimmy Vasser. 5th place is Maurizio Gugelmin, Pruett, Johnstone, Blundell, Andretti, and Rahal. We've got a bit of time to give you another page here. Ribeiro, the first of the Lola cars, Frank Kitty, Fernandez, the second of the Lola cars, Bozell and Pappas.
Did you see Al Jr. giving the nod to Paul Tracy? He said, #1. We want to see you #1. So he's giving a bit of inspiration to his teammate Paul Tracy, who's been red hot all weekend. A very disappointing way to go out of the race after so much effort. John Smales in the pits.
And I'm with Roger Penske, and Roger, sometimes mistakes just can't help but go wrong, can they?
Well, we had a tough break there. I guess picked up the wrong wrench wheel gun and thought it would change when he dropped, and it didn't. And of course, the nut didn't get on. We couldn't see it from where we were, but it's a tough break. Luckily, nothing happened. We'll just get on and see how Paul does.
What's the driver said to you?
Well, there's not much he could say. He said, well, it's all over, and there's no use dragging it around and ruining the car. So it's a tough day for Al. We're sorry.
So the nut was never on there. It wasn't a drive peg, probably the wheel's sitting incorrectly. It never got on. They leave the nuts in the standing gun so that when the cars come in, they can just grab another wrench and on it goes.
The most successful man in IndyCar racing, has won 9 championships, has won the Indy 500 10 times, and never won a single race last year, and that was hard to swallow for Roger Penske. But they have a new designer car this year, the same 2 drivers, Al Jr. and Paul Tracy, and now Roger can concentrate on seeing Paul Tracy on Goodyear tire sandwiched between 2 Firestone cars here, with Greg Moore running 3rd and Zanardi leading. Can Paul Tracy lead this race? I think he's strong, Neil. I think he looks very strong.
He does look very strong. Zanardi faded just around lap 7, lap 8, and was really under threat. It's interesting looking statistically at the Penske team. 29 years in IndyCar competition, 116 poles, 96 wins. So it's lap 12. Zanardi leads from Paul Tracy and Greg Moore. And we've got tremendous action still to come later on this afternoon.
The attrition continues as we get that lovely aerial shot of the Gold Coast, and there are your placings for the top 5. Gugelmin making it up, but they'll be going a lot faster when we return.
Tried to get by Greg Moore on the run down to that Sunbelt chicane, which is the first corner, very bumpy under braking there. But Zanardi, the man we're going to watch, because at about 7 or 8 laps that car began to slow down, and Tracy got ever closer before the full course yellows.
Top 5 order at the moment: Zanardi, Tracy, Moore, Vasser and Gugelmin. Look at Zanardi's car sliding out of that second gear left-hand bend. The 90-degree turns are the ones that are causing the problems for Zanardi. And his teammate, Jimmy Vassar, was very aggressive on the restart. He had a big go at Greg Moore. The two of them went side by side into turn one down at the Sunbelt chicane, and Moore came out on top.
One of the problems Greg Moore would have had if this race had gone without yellows, that car can only hold 34 gallons of methanol as opposed to 35. It's a brand new car he's in, but it doesn't make any difference now. Brian Herter still running. You saw him involved in the incident earlier on. Michael Andretti still bounds over the curb, the head of Ray Hall. This is the curb that everybody hits during qualifying. You try not to hit it. Look at Zanardi bounce over the bumps there and locks up those front wheels, Neil.
Zanardi's trying very hard while the tyres are relatively cool and perhaps the pressures have gone down a little. It's a time where if a driver can really muscle a car, he might make a valuable second or maybe two and just give himself a little cushion so that he doesn't have to fry the tyres when they do get up to full temperature and pressure.
And racing cars are like wild animals in a fight, trying to get away from you all the time. As soon as you take your eye off the ball or lose a concentration, you can get yourself in big trouble. Rear view camera from Zanardi's car looking back at Paul Tracy.
And these cars really are bullets out of a gun.
You can hear when he hits the curbs, you can hear the engine note change.
Lap 15, first, second and third. Oh, locks up again, does Alex Zanardi.
Well, Tracy must smell the lead of the race here because he sees Zanardi virtually out of control, trying to stay about a second clear of Paul Tracy.
You know, when you look at the chassis language of the two leading cars, I reckon the Penske's riding the bumps in those critical braking areas just a little better than the lead Reynard. Derek, Tracy's able to apply very, very strong braking pressure in these critical areas. We're not seeing any lock brakes. We're not seeing the front of the car pounding. It's not pounding up and down in the braking areas. If you look carefully at the lead car, the car bounces a lot.
And the man, of course, who has a grandstand view of this is Greg Moore in the blue. Reynard right there at the top of your picture. He doesn't seem to even use all the road like Zanardi and Tracy are. The key to it is, though, you have to try and drive the car as fast as necessary, but as easy as you can. Try not to wear out those rear tires.
Bounce, bounce, bounce again for Zanardi. Watch in the critical areas and then look at Paul Tracy if you can catch a glimpse in the background. The Penske is riding the bumps better.
Neil, you mentioned it earlier. When the rear tires begin to go off, you begin a downward spiral.
Hero Matt Schuster also calls to the pits. 289 kilometres an hour last time down the front straight, heading towards the Sunbelt chicane. Reasonable gap back to Greg Moore, 3.2 seconds. There he is, the player's entry for Forsyth Racing. Jump from Lola to Reynard. There's Vassar. Great scrap here between Gugelman and Pruett. Pruett makes a lunge. Oh, this is side-by-side stuff. Gugelman holds out under brake, covers his line, had to do it on the dirty track, but got away with it. Parker Johnston says, me too. Mark Blundell behind.
And a good defensive move there by Gugelman. He didn't block, he didn't change direction twice. He just makes things difficult for Scott Pruett. But Scott Pruett is a faster car than Gugelman at the moment. He just can't squeak that car past Gugelman.
Michael Andretti is tail-end Charlie in this bunch in the black Swift. Leader of the championship. Most successful IndyCar driver of all time with 36 wins to his credit. That's Vassar. Foster's chicane. Heading north on the back straight. Up now to a very tight second gear left-hander at Conrad Jupiter's turn. Scott Pruett driving for Pat Patrick. Got a break in his career with Pat Patrick. Became the Firestone test driver when Firestone announced that they were coming back to IndyCar competition to challenge Goodyear. Spent a year in a car. Was driving Indy cars with True Sports. Ultimately lost his drive, went back to Trans Am, won the championship again as we go on board with Michael Andretti.
Chasing Gugelman's teammate, Blundell. Did you see Blundell with oversteer coming onto this front straight? Michael can see that. He will try and pounce.
Right there where the Coca-Cola signs are is where we saw the accident earlier in the day with Christian Fittipaldi and Gilles de Ferran. Look at this, Scott Pruett tucked under the rear wing of Mauricio Gugelman.
Now the key is, Neil, Scott Pruett has to stay cool. He can't throw this whole thing away, but he is under pressure himself also, isn't he?
Lap 17, the top five, Zanardi, Tracy, Moore, Vassar and Gugelman. And you are 100% right, Derek. The critical thing now is to keep the pressure up, but not make any impetuous errors yourself. You want to stay in the guy's mirrors, you want to stay under his rear wing, you want to see whether you can just push him into a mistake. And one of the Toyotas has come unglued. It's PJ Jones. He had made a pit stop. Steam and smoke and smouldering, and it's not a pretty sight.
It is PJ Jones, a man who has raced in Australia before, took his midgets down here and raced. He was very spectacular in those midgets. He raced in Adelaide and Sydney and in Newcastle. This is the first time, though, in an Indy car, and he has the makings of a barbecue there.
Guzman just opened up a metre or two that time, but it's a seesawing gap. It's an elastic band. Parker John. Oh, we've got a yellow flag in the background. Now, what's going on there? It looks like just a local yellow.
Maybe that was for PJ Jones. We don't know. But look at Parker Johnstone. Has a great view of this dogfight going on between Scott Pruett and Guzman.
Adrian Fernandez in the Ducati Lola has a flat right rear tyre, I understand, and will come to the pits next lap. Order at the moment is Zanardi with a margin of 0.8 of a second over Paul Tracy, Greg Moore, Jimmy Vasser, Mauricio Guzman, Scott Pruett. Those two are on screen. This is the braking area at the Sunbelt chicane.
And Neil, Pruett seems to be faster down the straight than Guzman, but he can't quite get close enough to make a lunge down the inside. And I would almost suggest he might be a bit gun-shy following what happened with Parker Johnstone earlier. He knows now it must be clean, and he puts him under pressure again. But look at Guzman, blocks that inside line.
Mauricio's got an enormous bank of experience to draw from. He's done a lot of racing in Europe. He made it to Formula One. He's done a lot of IndyCar racing, and look at this gap narrowing between first and second. Alex Zanardi under pressure now from Paul Tracy. You know, the thing is, Derek, as you well know, you spent a long and successful career in Formula One and IndyCar. These cars are so difficult to pass because the performance difference between driver to driver, car to car is so minute. It's a tiny, tiny amount, and the braking distances are so short in any case.
Oh, 18 laps, and Zanardi is coming under increasing pressure from Paul Tracy. Tracy is good in the braking zone. Tracy will try you on the left, he'll try you on the right-hand side, he'll drive over the top of you if necessary. But Tracy is one of the most spectacular drivers in IndyCar racing, and Zanardi knows that. Zanardi knows that Tracy sticks his nose down the inside. You better let him go, or you're both going to crash.
Fernandez has pitted, taken on new tyres, and left the pits. He's had a flat right rear tyre. Hiro Schuster is in front of this leading duo, Zanardi and Tracy. He's been shown the blue flag and kindly pulls out of the way, doesn't interrupt the battle. 280 kilometres an hour.
I think that 260 was Schuster.
Whitman's light ship shows the view. A wonderful view on the Gold Coast Indy course. All 4.5 kilometres of this wild, bumpy street circuit, concrete lined, no room for error. Oh, and Alex Zanardi locks the rears. Then the car gets out of shape. He misses the apex.
Tracy's got him. Tracy's got him down the inside. A tiny mistake by Zanardi, and suddenly Paul Tracy pounces, so he didn't even have to force the issue. We saw Zanardi make those type of mistakes earlier.
Yeah, and it's coming because the car is not reading the road correctly under brakes. He's having to push very hard, things jumping around, it's then locking brakes, and it just momentarily unsettled the car. First it locked the rears, then it got out of shape and jumped across the bumps and locked the fronts. He missed the apex of the turn. Here's the McDonald's replay. There's the rear brakes locking up. He has to correct. Now he's in the wilderness because it's bumpy out there and it's dirty. He locks the front left. He misses the apex of the corner. Look at the front left wheel has stopped. He's 7 or 8 feet from where he needs to be on race line. Paul Tracy is on race line. Alex thinks twice about trying to chop Paul off. The rear view, though, will be fantastic. There's the tyre smoke. Tracy stays cool, stays on the race line, gets a perfect exit, and now holds the race lead. Incidentally, Max Pappas has made a call at the pits for fuel and tyres in the MCI entry and rejoins the race.
Well, the question is, can Paul Tracy keep it together? Look at the lead he has in less than a lap over Alex Zanardi. Already he pulls out almost 3 seconds of a gap over Alex Zanardi. Zanardi is in deep trouble. Does that mean, Neil, that the Firestone shod cars with a softer tyre are in trouble?
Possibly, although when you look at Greg Moore, he's also closing on Zanardi, so it may be related partially to the setup of the Ganassi cars. Remember, Zanardi's car is engineered by Mo Nunn, a man with enormous experience at the highest level of Formula Racing cars, and they've done such a tremendous job as a team through 1996 to have the setup for all seasons, for all tracks, for all temperatures, for all combinations. Barry Sheen in the pits.
Yeah, Al, it hasn't been your weekend, has it?
No, not at all. You know, whatever we try to do, it just seemed to come up wrong, and we ended up not getting the wheel on the wheel pins, and that's the way it went.
Did you realize as soon as you left the pit lane?
As soon as I went around the first right-hander, it was the left rear that came off, and that was it. You know, we, what can I say? We were just starting our pit strategy and all that, and that's the way things go. That's racing.
Never mind. Sorry, Al.
Yep, thanks.
Al in his 16th season of IndyCar racing, and we are under full course yellow again because somebody has dragged those tires that were at the apex of the Foster chicane. Somebody has hit them and put them right out on the racing line. They got to go try and get them. Here it is here, Neil.
And was it Max Pappas or Goltis? It was Goltis Salas. Well, when he's missing the nose, in fact, he's in plenty of trouble here. He's going to clout the wall. And this will set off a flurry of pit stops because we're at that critical phase of the race, lap 20.
Tracy is in. Tracy is the first man down the pit lane, so our leader comes in under this full course yellow.
And Zanardi. Zanardi's in too. And Vassar. And Gugelman. And Pruett. They're all in. The key, as I predicted, Blundell, Andretti, Parker Johnston, Andre Ribeiro. There goes Tracy. Oh, he's tagged Parker Johnston.
I can't believe that Paul Tracy gets himself into so much trouble. Who would have told him to accelerate out in that fast lane? And Parker Johnstone again gets into trouble. I think Tracy might have got away with it.
I think he did get away with it. And in fairness to Paul, he may be cued by the guy on the front right corner. But you're right, Derek. He gets himself in more strife than Ned Kelly. Oh, Dario Franchitti has completely missed his pit entry. I know I shouldn't be talking about things that we can't see on screen. There he is, Franchitti in trouble. We're going to have to take a break. There's great action coming to you from the Gold Coast this afternoon.
There's your leaderboard, though. Tracy, can the patience he used to win here 2 years ago give him victory again today? We'll be back.
Welcome back to the Sunbelt Indy Carnival. We are under full course yellow again. This is Golter Salas, who has hit the wall. He got collected by some tires. This is on board from Michael Andretti as he charged down the pit lane. And watch what happens here. Michael did not anticipate Blundell. Boom! Drop kicks Mark Blundell and manages to get away with it. Now watch here, Neil. This is an interesting incident.
Now you see that Paul gets cued. There it is. There's the far left side of screen. He is cued out of the pits. Now he gasses the thing, and then suddenly Parker's turned in and wallop. And I reckon, if my guess is correct, that's a bent steering arm on the front right-hand corner of that car. Now, how much damage that has done and what effect that will have.
The interesting thing, though, now is the Firestone cars, i.e. Zanardi, has changed onto the harder of the Firestone tires. John Smales, you're down there?
Yes, indeed, and major discussions going on at Goodyear pit as well. The Penske pit at this moment, the Paul Tracy car clipped the Parker Johnston car, as you saw. It appears that there could be a slow deflation in Paul Tracy's tyre. Now, Rick Mears and Roger Penske are deep in conversation behind me, and they are trying to make a decision at the moment whether to bring Tracy back in.
Well, I've spoken to Kim Green, Parker Johnston's team manager guy, and he says it doesn't appear to be any problems. If there is anything, it would certainly be a slow puncture because there's no mechanical damage to him.
It didn't look as if Johnstone got much of a smack, but Paul Tracy's steering arm is definitely bent from what we can see from here. So irrespective of the puncture, the steering will have more toe in on that car, and toe in around a racetrack like this when you need toe out is not desirable. So can he hang on ahead of Zanardi, who has now gone onto a harder Firestone tire and a slower Firestone tire? As we watch down on Hiro Matsushita. Who's he waving to? Is his mother on the grandstand?
He should be waving to his grandfather.
Hiro Matsushita owns Swift racing cars. He owns the company. He drives a Reynard. They don't have a Swift built for him yet, but he actually owns the company. And Dave Bruns is the designer of that particular car. They have one of the finest wind tunnels in the world, used by teams like Williams Grand Prix. So as soon as they can gather up Matt Schuster, we'll get back underway.
So this is an interesting and complex question, isn't it? We've got Tracy with potential damage. There's the Whitman's lightship's been giving us great pictures this afternoon. Tracy with some potential steering damage. Zanardi now back on the harder of the Firestone tyres, but clearly with a car that I don't think is 100% right for the road at the moment. Brian Herter hasn't stopped. That has catapulted him up to 3rd position. There he is in the Shell entry. Greg Moore is 4th, Jimmy Vasser is 5th.
And remember back to Roger Penske's initial gamble. This was exactly what he wanted to happen for Al Unser Jr. If that left rear wheel had have been bolted on properly, Al Unser Jr. would be, who was running ahead of Brian Herter, would probably be leading this race at the moment. The engines rev hard because they will go green, and Tracy is going to try and run as far as he can away from Zanardi.
This is Jimmy Vasser on board, heading down towards the Sunbelt chicane, approaching 295 kilometres an hour.
Tracy will know pretty quickly if the steering that is deranged in that car is going to cause him a serious problem or not.
It's Tracy in the foreground, then Zanardi, then Herter, then Moore. Penske leads Reynard. Oh, and Tracy locks up a front left this time. Remember, the tyres have lost a little temperature. The pressures perhaps have gone down just a little.
And we did see this brake locking with Zanardi early in these opening laps because of that tyre temperature. But now the gap that Tracy has here is purely because he accelerates from a low speed to a high speed. When things settle down here, let's see how Zanardi does.
You know what? The cars have got a very interesting piece of technology on them this year, Derek. PI Research in the UK have come up with a transponder that beams live telemetry information from all 4 corners of the car, as we see Tracy again locking a brake, which could be related to a geometry problem, and they get a live tyre pressure out of all 4 corners of the car. Maybe not as critical on a street or a road circuit, but a very critical factor on super speedways and 1 mile ovals. 0.3 of a second, but the stopwatch doesn't matter, because clearly Alex Zanardi is catching Paul Tracy. He's locked brakes for the first time in the last lap. We haven't seen him do that in the previous 23. I reckon he's in trouble.
Tire management, fuel management, race management. It's the responsibility of all good racing drivers. Zanardi got away. He dodged the bullet earlier by making that mistake and then losing the lead to Paul Tracy. Now, maybe he can begin to settle down a little bit.
And I reckon you'll find that in the cockpit of that car in front, Paul Tracy's got a struggle on his hands. I will bet my bottom dollar that the steering wheel isn't straight in that car. It's twisted in his hand because he's got a steering arm problem, and that makes the car difficult to drive. The geometry of the front wheels will be incorrect. It won't be steering or braking quite as precisely as it needs to. And with these cars, precision is an important aspect. A millimetre out here and there can have a profound impact on the performance of the car and the way in which the tyre behaves.
So Tracy trying to give Mercedes-Benz their 2nd win in a month in Australia, because they had a glorious day with David Coulthard winning the Formula 1 Grand Prix, which is the first Mercedes win in the current era. And now Paul Tracy, can he hang on and beat Alex Zanardi? He didn't in qualifying. He has the upper hand right now, but he has a bag full of problems to contend with. We mentioned it earlier, catching somebody is one thing, but I don't think Zanardi would take a big risk and try and stick his nose down the inside at this middle stage of the race.
Too early, lap 25 of 65. It's not the time for heroics. It's time to consolidate. Mercedes has never won this race. It's an important weekend for them if they can get up and try and get victory in Australia.
You see that, Neil? Tracy locking up those front wheels again. Blue smoke. 2 laps into this run, so he's got plenty of temperature now, plenty of grip in those tires, and he still manages to lock them up. But Zanardi and Tracy have now pulled away from Brian Herter, Greg Moore and Jimmy Vasser, who round out the top 5.
Last lap round, Tracy was marginally faster than Zanardi. He recorded a 1:39.9, which would be one of the quicker times I've seen in the race. A 40.1 for Zanardi. Herter did a 42.01, so he was a long way off the money.
see the cars bounce, this stiff suspension. You see the driver's head bounce up and down in the cockpit. There's Herta leading Greg Moore and Vassar right at the top of your screen.
This gives us a really good look at the gaps between the cars. Brian Herta in the Shell Reynard is third. It's Greg Moore in the Players Reynard fourth. Ford engine, Mercedes engine. Then it was Jimmy Vassar was the next guy through in fifth. Reynard Honda. Then Scott Pruett in the Reynard Ford. Mauricio Gugelman was next in the Reynard Mercedes. Michael Andretti in the Swift Ford. Mark Blundell in the Reynard Mercedes. And Parker Johnstone in the Reynard Honda.
It's hard to know whether Brian Herta has an advantage here. He has a light fuel load. However, he has worn tires. The boys behind them all have heavy fuel load and fresh tires. Now, as soon as Brian Herta drops into the pit lane, of course, he's completely out of sequence. When we go on board with these cars, we're on board with Jimmy Vassar now. The radio that you hear is the driver to the pit or pit to the driver radio frequency. Sometimes it's difficult to understand, but that is that radio communications between the driver and his pit crew.
Last time through, Tracy a 39.1. He keeps the pressure up, and Zanardi a 39.5. So he's actually stabilised. We're not seeing any evidence of these lock brakes. Maybe he's overcoming his difficulties.
Now, Scott Pruett, we wanted to watch him. His progress against Jimmy Vassar doesn't seem to be spectacular right now. He's there or thereabouts, but he's never close enough to quite make a move. But our top 10, Tracy Zanardi, 1.3 seconds. Tracy is a cushion over Zanardi. Brian Herta, Greg Moore, Jimmy Vassar. Scott Pruett still trying to close in on Vassar. Gugelman, who lost a position in the pit. Michael Andretti slowly creeping up from that 12th starting position.
Gee, I tell you, if Paul Tracy gets away with this one today, he's got out of jail a couple of times, hasn't he? He had that problem at the beginning of the original race that we had that was nullified after 1.5 laps. Took out the tyres down at the dime turn. He was involved in catastrophe in the pit lane with Parker Johnston, and very solid contact with the front of his car at the side of Parker's car as we go on board with Michael Andretti in the Foster's chicane.
This is a freight train of cars here, all the way from Brian Herta down to Mark Blundell, third down to ninth, are all in a long line here. Michael, of course, who can forget his exploits in the Reynard back in '94 when he hit the grass, the curbs, other cars, the wall, the tires, and still managed to win. Crashes over the curbs. The Ford power versus the Mercedes power in Gugelman's car right ahead of him. Michael looks quicker there, has a little poke down the inside just to remind Gugelman that I'm here, tries to put him under pressure. Look at the freight train of cars here.
It's Gugelman with the Hollywood livery. Green and white car is Parker Johnstone. That's the LCI car of Andre Ribeiro.
Parker Johnstone, after that incident with Paul Tracy, moved down the order, down to 10th place behind Blundell. So that pit stop didn't do him any favors. There's the first Lola. You see it, the brightly colored car at the top of the picture chasing Parker Johnstone, the fastest Lola in the field. And Lola may be in trouble this year if they don't begin to get that car to go a bit faster.
Terrific shot looking backwards from Jimmy Vassar, who's currently in 5th position. We're looking at Scott Pruett in the Brahma Sports entry, the Pat Patrick Racing Reynard, with a Ford power plant, Firestone tyres. This is a tight old traffic jam at the moment. Herta, and in fact, Herta's really the cork in the bottle. He's the guy that's actually not lapping super quick at the moment. And of the fuel position 3, the message to Jimmy Vassar, that's the mixture switch on the dashboard of these cars. That'll be one of the Honda engineers talking to Jimmy Vassar. 294 Ks. So they're asking Jimmy Vasser to change the mapping in the fuel map on the engine in order to be able to get the right kind of fuel burn through to the next targeted pit stop window.
So almost 300 Ks down these straights. Here goes Michael. Down the inside, forces the issue.
And Mauricio gives way, which was smart driving because that could have ended in tears.
He didn't have an option there. If he turned down to the apex, there was going to be a crash. But that's the way to do it on these street circuits, Neil. You have to go all the way down, take the apex, and don't give the other driver a choice.
The thing that I was fumbling through before trying to explain is that Herta's really the slowest of the top 10 drivers at the moment. There he is, and he's got Blundell behind him, so he's actually starting to drift through the pack now. Michael Andretti on board. And you asked before, Derek, whether it's better to have full fuel and new tyres or low fuel and old tyres. I think we're seeing the answer.
Now he's behind Pruett. So if Pruett cannot make progress against Jimmy Vasser, Michael would quite happily take the position. Here's Michael.
McDonald's replay. Under brakes, second gear left-hander. Oh, he locks the front, flips over the top of the tyres, and he gets away with it. And as Derek said, that's the only way to do business on a circuit like this. You've got to be quick, clean, concise, and harsh. You cannot afford to be a second-guesser.
And in this long stream of cars, Brian Herta, you'll see, is missing. He has gone way to the back. Was running third, now Greg Moore is third. Jimmy Vasser is fourth, Scott Pruett's up to fifth, and Michael is up to sixth. So Michael Andretti, just like he did at Homestead, during these long runs in the race, that Swift car seems to be pretty good. Vasser under pressure from Pruett. On board with Jimmy Vasser, looking back at Scott Pruett.
That car of Pruett's rides the bumps well.
That almost sounded as Jimmy Vasser missed a gear, or wasn't in the correct gear as he accelerated off that apex.
It was very doughy off the corner, very low in the rev range.
Look at the black mark on Scott Pruett's nose. He's already given Jimmy Vasser's car a love tap. You can see it. The nose has hit those tires.
Gugelman's really dropped out of contention with this group now. Oh, we've got Parker Johnston and Brian Herta in trouble, and what's all this about? Parker's giving traffic directions.
Good chap. Oh, Blundell's involved too.
Now, this is duty above and beyond.
So we had 8th, 9th, and 10th. Brian Herta, Mark Blundell, and Parker Johnstone all got themselves in a huge tangle.
Full course yellow, incidentally. Now, Parker's had a run at Brian, which is why he's feeling sheepish, I should imagine, and offering some assistance. Yes. It was Gilt that was driving the old restart you. And Blundell was an innocent bystander. Ribeiro gets through. This has prompted the full course yellow. Another angle may tell more of the story. Parker all locked up. Rear brakes. A nice little T-boning for Brian Herta, which is split a radiator. You can see when we go back to live pictures that there's radiator fluid or engine fluid all over the road.
I would venture to say that was a pretty ambitious move for Parker Johnstone to try and pull off. He really had no hope of trying to stop that car. But Neil, one of the unusual things is so many people seem to be locking up those rear brakes.
Well, the front brakes are getting very, very hot around this circuit. We know that the place has a reputation for being hard on brakes. Now, John Smales, I believe, is in the pits with more information about what's happening with Team Cool Green.
And I'm with Barry Green at the moment. Barry, what's the driver tell you?
Well, I think he might be coming back in. He's back in the car. He's just getting a little bit frustrated behind one of the slower cars there and took a big dive down the inside. Didn't work out, but we're coming back in, so we're going to get back to work here. Checking your leaders then as we go to a break. Tracy still in front. There is your margin on the right-hand side of your screen. 1.518 to Alex Zanardi. Can he turn that massive number of poles and front rows into victories? Today would be a good place to start. Andretti, Gugelman, Herta, Blundell and Johnston making up the top 10.
Parker Johnstone does make it back to Barry Green's pit. They will put a new nose cone on this car. The guilty party gets away and has another chance. But Parker Johnstone had no hope, Neil, of making it down on that inside line because it's so slippery down a dime turn.
Lots of dirt, lots of rubber on the road, and he was coming from too far out. And Obviously, the front brakes are starting to fade on some of these cars. We're seeing a lot of locked rear brakes, and he got it all crossed up and got into strife. Lap 32 of this 65-lap race. John Smales in the pits.
And a unique opportunity to have a look at just what the construction of these cars is all about, because Parker brought back a bit from out of the accident side. Look at this, the honeycomb construction in here between two parts of carbon fibre. This, incidentally, is what's left of the wing, the front wing of Parker Johnston's car.
Carbon fibre, of course, is lighter and stronger than steel, and if you give the side of the tub a little smack with your hand, it actually feels like concrete. It is that strong, but lighter and stronger than steel. Of course, McLaren in Formula One pioneered the use of these molded carbon tubs. That gives us a little chance to go through the field. Now, Tracy obviously doesn't have too much trouble with the bent steering arm. Zanardi has settled down a little bit. Greg Moore minding his own business, running a superb race. Vassar, no threat to Greg Moore. Scott Pruett, we think should have been a threat to Vassar, but isn't yet. But Michael Andretti begins to leapfrog from 12th place in the grid and is slowly making his way to the front. Gugelmin, he's strong. Ribeiro, I think, from 8th, 9th, and 10th down, they are not contenders to be at the front of this field. Frank Kitty, Rahal, of course, Richie Hearn, we saw his problem earlier on. Fernandez had a lengthy stop earlier. Fangio, teammate to PJ Jones, who we saw blow up earlier on in the other of the Toyota cars. Fangio's car, incidentally, is a 96 Reynard with the old-style engine.
Tracy team, what they're going to do, they're going to give a couple more turns on the front wing of both Jimmy's car and Alex's car to give it a bit more downforce, because apparently on the fast corners it's getting a bit loose on the front. You know more about that than me, of course.
What Barry is talking about there is, see those jet flaps that are either side of the nose on Andre Ribeiro's car and the front wing assembly? They're adjustable, and as you crank them up, you make more downforce. It also makes more drag, but it pushes the front tyres down on the road. Now let me think, is it half a turn or one turn that makes a degree? I can't remember, but in any case, it gives more downforce, and that's what the drivers have complained of. They want to get more grip on the front of the car, so they adjust the wings. As we go on board with young Andre from Brazil in the LCI Tasman Lola Honda.
And of course, racing cars are all a compromise. The front wing affects so many other things. You get more downforce, however, you now have less airflow in through the radiators. Sometimes too much of that wing flap at the front can overheat.
That's first chicane. Watch out for anything stupid with the Gio behind.
That's the voice of Don Halliday, engineer to Andre Ribeiro.
You hear what he said?
Yeah, he's giving Jill Ferrin a character reference.
Watch out for anything stupid by De Ferrin, who's right behind you.
I'm not sure that Jill will have made a lot of free. Oh, who is that having the huge front right brake lockup going up into the Honda hairpin on a caution lap?
Now, watch Michael Andretti on these restarts, because he is exceptional when you have to be really brave and dig down deep on these openers, but the green flag does fly. So all the guns are loaded once again, and Zanardi, can he catch Tracy? Where is Michael? There he is, right behind Scott Pruett. He will fill his mirrors, particularly when the tires are cool, and you have to be extra brave. There he is, right behind Scott Pruett in the black Swift.
So let's just tidy up some paperwork here. It's Tracy leading, locking brakes from Alex Zanardi. Greg Moore third, as Derek said, just easing along today, doing a nice, smooth, calm job. Hasn't been involved in any trauma. Jimmy Vassar fourth, Scott Pruett fifth. There's the margin second to third as we take the tremendous shot looking down towards the DMSs, approaching it 270 kilometres an hour.
This is Tracy's favorite corner. He said he loves the high speed. He thinks this is a challenge. He's not a big fan of chicanes, but he said that's more of a corner than a chicane blast. But the one that's most spectacular is the Foster chicane, because it is so fast. Lap 34. Many full course yellows. Here's this Foster chicane. Just crash over the top of those curves and hope that you point this thing straight. Pruett chasing Vassar.
Yes, and he, I think, is the man making some pressure at the moment. He's giving Vassar some hurry up, giving him something to think about, filling his mirrors. This is the northern end of the circuit through a series of left and right turns, 90-degree bends that leads you on to the Honda hairpin for this big, long, fast run down the straight. It's a very, very difficult corner to get out of cleanly without the car winding sideways under this enormous power that the drivers have at the disposal of their right foot.
So there's the Ford engine in Scott Pruett's car, almost 290 clicks. They all close up under that braking zone. That was Gugelmin that's behind Michael. But Pruett knows that to get a protection buffer for himself, he needs to try and claw his way by Jimmy Vasser. Almost touches the wall. Look at Scott Pruett. Wow.
How close was Pruett to the wall on the exit of that second chicane?
Second gear. Oh, Pruett locks the right front. Locks the right front, gets right up under the rear wing of Jimmy Vasser. We're on board with Jimmy Vasser.
Is making what appears to be an unusual sound. Does it sound normal to you, Derek?
There's a funny resonance from the exhaust. Maybe just the microphone.
You know what that could be? And this is commentary speculation, which is always dangerous, but a car with an enormous flat spot on a tyre shakes like that. Shakes like that. Makes that terrible sound. Might be my imagination, of course.
So Scott Pruett between these concrete walls trying to get up to the lead. He was the fastest man on the racetrack in the morning warm-up this morning. Michael Andretti hangs on right behind him. Michael has had nothing but trouble all weekend here trying to get the Swift car to his liking. Meanwhile, Tracy still is able to stay ahead of Zanardi 1.5 seconds with a bent right front steering arm.
292 clicks down the main straight. They're looking rearward. This is on board with Jimmy Vasser in the Target Chip Ganassi Reynard Honda. Looking at the aggressive nose of the Reynard Ford driven by Scott Pruett, runner-up in the 1996 Gold Coast Grand Prix, and it's Michael Andretti tucked in behind him, and Andretti's looking pretty threatening at the moment.
Oh, Pruett, no, Vasser locks up that right front.
A meagre timing shows us the 1.6 second gap between Paul Tracy and Alex Zanardi. Greg Moore still quietly trundling along in third place in the blue and white players entry. There's Vasser fourth, Pruett fifth, Andretti sixth. Mauricio Gugelmin in seventh, Ribeiro, De Ferran and Franchitti round out the 10. John Smales in the pits.
Indeed, Neil, and what we're hearing about Scott Pruett, you asked earlier, is that whilst there's nothing else wrong with the car, they're saying, Pruett reported a low oil pressure alarm on in the motor car. Team manager Jim McGee has replied that it's only an instrument problem and there's no drama.
Now, Jim McGee can override Scott Pruett there because the team of Ford engineers are looking at live telemetry coming out of that car, and they will know precisely the temperatures and the pressures and the important things relating to that car. Scott, meanwhile, has an instrument panel that shows him, as we go on board with Michael Andretti, various messages that would have read alarm, alarm, low oil pressure. Scott then resets the PI instruments system on the car and will ignore it and press on.
Great onboard cameras here with, wheel spin. That's the problem. Wheel spin oversteer, and once it starts, you begin to grain the rubber. Grain the rubber, it means you roll the rubber up on balls on the inside of the tire, and suddenly when you get wheel spin, if you don't be careful, it gets worse. You get more wheel spin, you got to slow down, and the downward spiral starts.
Impressed by Greg Moore's run. We haven't seen a lot of him, Derek, but this is a good drive from him. He's in third. John, more information?
Yes, indeed, Neil. Jimmy Vasser, right in front of Scott Pruett, has just been told by his pit to increase the boost pressure. This race is now really on.
And he's trying to catch Greg Moore, who, to my mind, has had one of the best drives of this race, because Greg Moore has stayed out of trouble and watched the battles ahead of him and behind him in his mirrors, and really has had a pretty comfortable day. This is the fight here. Scott Pruett still trying to pass Vasser. We mentioned earlier how racing drivers are able to put out of their mind serious accidents and injuries. Well, Scott Pruett suffered horrible injuries in a crash in testing several years back. Broke his legs, his knees, broke his back. To get into a racing car, he had to have a metal rod and staples inserted in his vertebrae that are still in his back today. And yet, a driver who has difficulty walking now, as Scott Pruett does, still dreams about driving racing cars and couldn't wait to get physically fit enough just to get back in to do his job.
Came back from that accident at West Palm Beach in Florida in 1989 to go close to winning the Indy 500 in 95, and we've got another yellow flag situation, this time Parker Johnston.
Yeah, but look what we also have. Paul Tracy is in real trouble now because Zanardi was right behind him in that braking zone. So while they gather up Parker Johnstone, Zanardi is beginning to close down on Paul Tracy. Tracy could be under real pressure.
Drivers last stopped on lap 20. This is lap 38. McDonald's replay shows where is Parker going. He's nailed the inside. Something strange has happened to that car. He's nailed the inside wall. That's a left-hander that takes you onto the approach to the back straight, and that car wasn't steering correctly.
Maybe a consequence of that broken right front suspension, which is the one that he hit. No, it wasn't the one that he hit Paul Tracy with, but that right front suspension got damaged somehow.
Well, it's something related to the Brian Herder incident, no doubt. His day is done. The point I was trying to make badly before, and we've got a fire with Fangio, or is it Jones?
Fangio.
Fangio. The demise of another of the Toyota engines, which is unfortunate for this team.
Black smoke denoting
full course yellow.
Oil, burning oil. So Fangio unfortunately was not able to get that car out from the racing line, so we will go full course yellow, and the pit lane has been closed, so nobody can take advantage of this.
That's right, and I was about to make mention of the fact that the cars last stopped on lap 20, that is the front-running cars, and they are just about due for a stop. And as you correctly called, Derek, they've closed the pit lane now for access, so they'll stay out there, which then provokes an interesting question about who's going to come in when we go green again, and who will stay out and how long they can stay for.
Fangio, disgusted, takes his gloves off, throws them on the ground.
Former IMSA sports car champion for Toyota, had a career used to winning, and that's something that isn't happening for him at the moment. It would be enormously frustrating for one Fangio II.
Very much a development program, this Toyota program, run by Dan Gurney. Dan Gurney, of course, one of the legendary names of American motorsports, who in fact raced against Alan Jones' dad here in Australia in Ballarat. Have you heard of Ballarat?
I was born there.
Let's go down to the pits.
Yeah, Barry Green is with me in the pits again, and this time it's all over.
Yeah, we're dead in the water now. I guess he must have hurt the suspension in the previous accident, and looks like we've broken an upright or a wheel, and we're definitely out now. But I mean, we tried to hit everything out there, and everyone tried to hit us. We just had another rough day in Australia, so it's not going to be this year.
So problems there for Team Green. They're spectators now. Tracy still leads, but pressured by Alex Zanardi. You can see that margin on the right of your screen has decreased by more than a second since we last looked at this leaderboard. Greg Moore in third place, patient and looking strong. Andretti picking his way through the field. Gugelmin, Ribeiro, DeFerrin still out there after being in the midst of a lot of trouble. We'll be back soon.
Harum scarum time in the pits because Zanardi and Paul Tracy have come in. Remember what happened the last time. Now the Penske crew can get an opportunity as Zanardi gets his tires on and fuel. The Penske team can have an opportunity to have a look at Paul Tracy's right front. The damaged steering to the right front. They can have a quick look at it and get him back underway. So the leaders made quick pit stops and get back out. This is Jimmy Vasser. Jimmy Vasser, one of his pit crew members, almost gets the chop from Gugelmin as he leaves in his Pac West car. It can be harum scarum time down there in these pit lanes. Believe it or not, our leader And we'll have to confirm this later, but leader on the road is Arnd Meyer, who drives for Andreas Lieberli in the Project Indy car because he has not stopped and taken advantage, and one of the crew members is injured. John?
Yes, indeed. It's one of Michael Andretti's men. He was hit by Raoul Bosell during Bosell's pit stop. He was lying down for quite some time, now being carried away to the medical centre, as you can see. He certainly seems okay in himself. He's talking to everyone, but his right foot seems injured.
Arnd Meyer having his IndyCar debut this weekend, having come from German Formula 3. He was at Putnam Park, Indianapolis last week testing that car. Spent more time in the grass than on the track, but he was testing the car. And he didn't stop, which is why he now leads the race. However, all the main contenders have stopped. And the man that leads the race is still Paul Tracy. Barry?
Getting his time on television.
It's 15 seconds.
Which is probably what predicated that decision not to pull him into the pits. So Arnd Meyer, who had an interesting qualifying session here. He had a crash on Friday. Really has precious little testing other than that Putnam Park and Indianapolis run, but there he is in first place. Arnd Meyer has yet to make a pit stop, but the battle is behind him. Tracy and Zanardi. Patrick Carpentier did not make the stop also, so he is running fourth, and they're sixth down through 10th, with Rivero being the fastest Lola. And here comes the run again for the green flag. Tracy makes short work of Arnd Meyer. He needs to get out of the way as soon as possible.
Oh, and
He's over the grass.
Meyer was not relenting then. He decided that he was going to race, and that could have cost... Oh, Paul Tracy's dragged a witch's hat with him, but it's clear now of the car. That's enabled Zanardi to close up. Not very good driving, I'm afraid.
Arnd Meyer has no business being there. Here's Zanardi. He's in trouble. Oh, wheel out. He touches wheel to wheel. Interlocks the wheel. So now what happens?
They're both out of business, Derek. That's what happens. Paul Tracy's fiancée.
That's Lisa.
Full course yellow.
And you could read that problem from about 3 corners back, because you had 2 aggressive men not prepared to give way. And now guess who takes the lead in this race? Scott Pruett.
Well, Arnd Meyer triggered it. Zanardi made a run. Dario Franchitti in trouble. He stalled, incidentally, in his last pit stop. It's been a tough day at the office for him, as the crews now work at taking Paul Tracy out of the car.
Helped by Parker Johnstone.
Stay in your car. Stay in your car.
Well, this is going to be an interesting replay, because Zanardi believes that he can get running again. John Smales?
Jim McGee at the moment, who has just advanced to position 1. Jim, tactics for the rest of the race.
Well, we just got to make sure we got enough fuel to make it to the end. It depends on how long this yellow is going to be, but we got good tires. The Firestone's doing a good job, so hopefully...
You're very relaxed for a man who's just taken the lead.
Well, we never get too excited until after the checkered flag.
Now, what about your concerns about whether it's going to be a distance race or whether it's going to be a time race?
Doesn't make any difference. We're fine on fuel.
There's the start of the incident. Paul Tracy gets into a boxing match with Arnd Meyer, which was so stupid. Arnd Meyer should never even be there. Tracy is forced over the curbs, grabs the witch's hat in the left front wing. But luckily for him, Zanardi at this stage, Neil, was also slowed. But it got worse from here.
Well, it gave the carrot to Zanardi when they got down to dime turn to make a run at him. So Meyer has gone straight ahead down there, as you said, had no business being there. Now, Zanardi locks all 4 up. Tracy does a classic crisscross on him and tries to come out underneath, but tags him on the way, which I then think started a steering problem for him. Here's the other McDonald's replay angle, but then...
Oh, Zanardi's moving over. Zanardi is trying to close the door on Tracy and gets himself in all sorts of trouble. Now, Zanardi's car is still running. He is now down at the back of the field, but we've had so many full course yellows here, it's doubtful whether he can get back right to the front again, but he can't get running.
Look at the front of Paul Tracy's car. It's got about 7 inches of tow out on the front right and about 20 degrees of negative camber. And there is Paul Tracy. He will not be a happy camper.
I mean, this has been a war zone for Paul Tracy. That's Parker Johnstone down there also, but an absolute war zone for Paul Tracy. What a shame, because despite the damage he had on the steering after that first incident with Parker Johnstone, who he has a chat with there, he still did seem, Neil, to have the speed to hold off Zanardi.
He did. You know, Parker Johnston could become a traffic cop in his second life. He spent more time directing cars down there today than actually in the car. Paul Tracy's face just tells the story. He is not happy, and I think, and it's always hard to say from here, perhaps justifiably so.
I wonder, did Zanardi see Tracy come down that inside? Because it looked as if he began to tighten down that line to take a defensive line to the left-hander, and Tracy obviously was going to force the issue and certainly wasn't going to back off. And then you had the crisscross. So Lisa, who gets to see Paul, her fiance, race on a street circuit for the very first time, realizes how quickly in motorsports all the effort and all the travel and all the laps can suddenly come to zero.
It would have been good to hear this, wouldn't it?
Everybody has their own idea of exactly what happened. John Smales, what's down there?
What's down here is a very disappointed Roger Penske. Roger, just not your day.
Well, it was tough on the start with a slower car up front, obviously. He was trying to hold his line. Paul went across the grass. I could see it looked like as he and Zanardi got together, coming off, Zanardi moved over and they got the wheels together. Unfortunately, there's 20 laps to go, and you know, just disappointing to us. We got a good car today, obviously. We're back, excited for Paul and unfortunate on Al, but again, we came a long way. We didn't get what we wanted, but we'll be at Long Beach.
Are you attaching any blame to Zanardi?
I can't. It's racing. This is not the point to be pointing fingers. You saw it yourself. Everybody saw, knows what happened.
Barry Sheen is with Chip Ganassi.
Yeah, well, I'm at the Ganassi pit. Any minute now, you're going to see Zanardi come in here. Apparently, well, obviously, he's got the thing going again, but he says he feels a little bit strange. So we'll just stand by here, and I'll watch with you. It's I don't know. I haven't got the faintest idea. We'll just have to wait until he comes in. He said that something feels strange, but they couldn't quite hear what he was saying. Seatbelt. Apparently, the seatbelt is a problem, and it's he has to get it adjusted. So here he comes. Let's have a look.
Barry, what it will be is Zanardi thought he was done. He probably undid the seatbelt to get out of the car.
You're right.
And the only way he can do up the seatbelt is to make the stop. We saw Parker Johnstone do that earlier on.
Incidentally, he's rejoined in 16th position. Well, that is prior to this pit stop. Grabs the gear, exit pits. This may drop him down a few spots more. So the new order, and this is very important, is Scott Pruett, 43 laps down. Jimmy Vasser is second. Mauricio Gugelmin is third. Greg Moore is fourth. Michael Andretti is fifth, and they go green on the next lap. Andre Ribeiro is sixth. Gilles de Ferran seventh. Richie Hearn is eighth. Raul Bocel is ninth. Adrian Fernandez 10th.
And we think at this stage, unofficially, the only drivers who haven't hit anything is Jimmy Vasser and Greg Moore.
Last weekend on Network 10's new motorsports program, RPM, Scott Pruett told us that he's been fourth, third and second in successive years here at the Gold Coast Indy. Could this year yield the winning position?
And he has been brimful of confidence here all weekend. He has been fast all the time, and don't remember, we mentioned it earlier in the morning warm-up, the fastest man by a clear second.
And Scott Pruett has been told it's going to be awfully close on fuel. In fact, his team has told him to wind down the boost. He's got to get at least 2 miles per gallon out of the car to the finish.
2 miles per gallon means that normally what they have to get is 1.85 miles to the gallon. In other words, they give you a certain amount of fuel. As we watch this replay again, that was the first smack. Now look at Zanardi. Zanardi, I think, yes, he begins to move over left, Neil. Obviously, Paul Tracy was not going to give him an inch, and there's the result. Look at Pruett. I'm watching the whole thing go on.
Bang into the tyre barriers.
That might be why Barry Sheen told us earlier that something feels funny, because he hit the tyre barrier so hard.
Thank goodness for the tyre barriers in the straight ahead position.
What next on this incredible day of racing? Indy Carnival 97. Scott Pruett has inherited the lead. Jimmy Vasser, the current world champion, is now in second place. Gugelmin, Moore and Andretti make up the top 5. Who will come first? Will it be Darkness or Scott Pruett?
In a halted.
We are back on board with Michael Andretti. This is lap 45 of 65, or possibly 5 o'clock. 65 laps or 2 hours. And it is still fast and furious here. Scott Pruett still leads over Jimmy Vasser, but Michael Andretti has come all the way from 12th up to 5th, and that is Greg Moore right ahead of Michael Andretti.
See the little shift lights on the top of the steering wheel there, Derek? There they go in sequence. 1, 2, 3, red.
Minus
when you got 3
fuel,
reds,
Michael.
pull a gear.
-4 on fuel.
Michael, -4 on fuel. They want to conserve fuel in that Ford engine.
That's Lee White, his team manager. So now the challenge for Michael is to try and still make the pass, but not be able to dial more fuel into that engine. The more fuel you put in, the more power you get. So Lee White is quite prepared to say, sit there, do the best you can, but only on position 4 with the fuel.
In other words, he's going to have to do it with the chassis, not with the engine.
Now, also, we know that Scott Pruett may have a potential fuel problem. We have a Ford engine versus a Honda in Jimmy Vasser's car. The Honda is known to be a little bit more fuel efficient than the Ford or the Mercedes. So Pruett, who leads, Jimmy Vasser will also know as we go on board very quickly with Alex Zanardi as he carves his way through the field and gets a smack along the way. Look at this, in all sorts of trouble again.
Did he touch Bobby Rahal that time?
Yes, he did. He touched somebody right rear, got a smack, and Zanardi has incident number 2 for the day.
So now the balancing act. Lap 47, there's positions 6 through 10, Ribeiro, De Ferran, Hearn, Vassell, Fernandez. 11 through 15, Blundell, Rahal, Zanardi, Pappas and Carpentier. We're watching Jimmy Vasser. Vasser is second. Not a man prone to mistake. 16 through 20. Arndt Meyer, Dario Franchitti, Michel Jourdain Jr. Paul Tracy, of course, is now out of the order.
Scott Pruett under pressure. Remember back to last year? It was the opposite. Vasser was leading and Pruett was all over him. Now it's reversed.
LCI Lola Honda, driven by Andre Ribeiro. Twice a winner in 1996 in Rio and also at Michigan.
Firestone cars lead. They are second. They are third. They are fourth. And you go all the way down to Michael Andretti, who is in 5th place before you get the first car on Goodyear tires. So the tire war, now the advantage is with Firestone.
On board now with Ribeiro and the Lola. He's position 6 with 5 Reynards in front. Honda power. Splits his time between Brazil and Miami, Florida. Tasman Motorsports adding a 5th Lola Honda to its fleet in 1997, a dedicated test team car. They had a successful test in Sebring, Florida a couple of weeks ago where they believe they found and corrected a problem with the Lola chassis.
Which is rumored to have been a flexing problem where the engine mounts to the back of the tub. They have a stronger bulkhead in there, but they believed when they came here that this car turns in to corners very well. And the braking and turning, you are braking and turning for such a long time on this racetrack that they thought everything would be hunky-dory, but in fact the Lolas have not been that fast. But interesting from those pictures, you get an idea of this sunset. As the sun goes down, it gets more and more difficult, Neil, for these drivers to see exactly where they're going.
And did you notice the little vortices coming off the rear wing on Ribeiro's car? And he's lapping at a good, consistent pace at the moment. He's matching the speed of the people around him. This is Gugelmin. And it's compressing as we get down to the business end of this race. Pruett, Vasser, Gugelmin, Moore, Andretti, Ribeiro.
Greg Moore and Michael Andretti are the fastest cars on the track at this particular time. With 17 laps to go, they are in the 1:40s range. That is why you see Gugelmin and Moore begin to close up on Vasser. Was that brake? Was that a brake lock I heard? Brake squeal, tire squeal?
You could hear transmission chatter. John Smales in the pits.
Yes, Neil, with 17 laps to go, Scott Pruett is in dead trouble. He will need a splash of fuel if it goes the full distance. However, Pruett's team have just been down to race control. They are trying to find out whether the race will be called early on time. If it is, they can get through to the end without a stop. Barry Sheen.
I tell you what is really interesting, Zanardi could come out of this in the pound seats, because I don't know whether you noticed when he came in for that stop, they put some fuel in his car. So I was just talking to his engineer, Tom, and he said he can wind the boost up as far as he likes. You know, he's got, well, not as far as he likes, but he really is in good form. You know, he can turn the boost up really high, and you guys know what that means.
It means horsepower, and he's currently in position 11. His last lap was a 39.6. He's comprehensively the fastest man on the circuit at the moment, but his time running out as we look at Scott Pruett, Jimmy Vasser, Mauricio Gugelmin, the top three after 49 laps.
And the key here is that Vasser needs to pressurize Scott Pruett as much as he can. Rahal is in all sorts of trouble. Crashes over the top of the grass. Luckily, those curves aren't too high. All the tires that sat there earlier have been moved out of the way, so Rahal gets away with it, being chased by Adrian Fernandez.
Rahal 12th, Fernandez 13th. Gugelmin has turned around. The man that was running in third position has spun down at his dime corner. I'm not 100% sure.
How did he get turned around? Did somebody hit him, or did he do it all by his lonesome? Anybody else involved? We don't see anybody else. I don't see any damage on that car, but Gugelmin, who ran so well here, every time he's been here, is now dead in the water.
Is the McDonald's replay. It will tell the story. Is it on the dirty side of the road? Full course yellow. He makes a lunge under Jimmy Vasser, locks the rear brakes. It's the same old story, and he tags Vasser, who also tags the wall.
And Greg Moore, look at that. Greg Moore, who's behaved himself all weekend here, says thank you very much and begins to sneak down the inside. Neil, again, we saw those rear brakes lock up and put these drivers into trouble.
Gugelmin stranded on the beach at Surfers Paradise. Scott Pruett leading the race. Under pressure now from Greg Moore. Jimmy Vasser in a little trouble too, slowed down by that contact. Come back for more action with us.
Jimmy Vasser brings his target, Chip Ganassi-Reynard, in because of the damage from being drop-kicked by Mauricio Gugelmin. He drops all the way to the back of the field. Oh, he lights her up and gets on the rev limiter, and there's the damage wheel from that unforgiving concrete wall. So we have 14 laps, or just under 10 minutes left, and Scott Pruett may just have got the reprieve because those two precious laps under yellow may allow him to go without a splash and go for fuel.
And at precisely 15 seconds to 5 o'clock this evening, this race will end, which is a little less than 10 minutes away.
So Greg Moore, who has had such an impressive drive, has not hit anybody, and that's impressive today, is now hounded by Michael Andretti, who is Mr. Aggressive. And Michael, who would have thought he could come from 12th on the grid and slowly claw his way up towards the front. We saw him drop kick Mark Blundell in the pit lane earlier, and look at this. Is he threatening? He's getting close to the rear wing of Greg Moore.
In that time frame that I mentioned, they might squeeze 6 or 7 laps in as we go on board with Michael Andretti up to the Foster's chicane. Chasing Greg Moore. Behind Andretti is Ribeiro, DeFerrin, Richie Hearn, good drive, Raul Bassel, Mark Blundell, Alex Zanardi now in the top 10. Important for the championship for him, and Bobby Rahal. Look at the sun in the eyes, yes.
Sun now is lower than it's been. In all the practice sessions that they've had here, they've never gone through a situation like this. That camera is just what the driver sees also. Remember, there's oil and dust and dirt on the driver's helmets at this stage, but you have a Ford engine leading a Mercedes-Benz, leading a Ford, which is in Michael Andretti's car.
And remember that both Pruett and Moore were on the podium here last year. Reynard, 1 and 2, Swift Chassis 3, Roll of 4th, and Reynard 5th. The tyre situation, Firestone, Goodyear, Firestone.
Andre Ribeiro on the top of the picture. He is fourth. Gilles DeFerrin, who'd have thought he would have got away with his incident with Christian Fittipaldi. He got into the spare car. He is now running 5th. Raoul Boesel is 6th, Scott Pruett's teammate. But Pruett has control of this race if he has enough methanol in that bag tank that sits right behind the driver's seat.
And his last lap, Derek, was a 39.9, quite comprehensively quicker than Greg Moore and Michael Andretti. John Smales?
And Neil McElwright, second in the race now. A superb race.
Yeah, so far things have gone pretty well for us. I think we're struggling somewhat with fuel mileage, but that seems to be pretty much the problem with quite a few of the drivers. So they've just now announced that the race is going to be timed rather than go the full distance. So we're going to stop worrying about fuel right now and just go race.
You couldn't have got to the end without a splash if it had gone a distance race.
That's correct.
So as Zanardi chases the back of Raoul Boesel, Zanardi is now in 7th, so he is going to pick up some championship points here. So suddenly, Scott Pruett has dodged the bullet. There is not enough laps to use all the fuel in the bag tank that sits behind his seat. So it is now a sprint to the finish, which is just over.
You can do it, baby. You can do it.
6 minutes time. You can do it, baby. You can do it. Get into the top 6 past Boesel.
Zanardi did a 39.8 last lap, but Scott Pruett is pulling the stops out. He recorded a 138.4, which was 0.6 of a second quicker than Moore. He's got the ability to sprint.
Yes, Scott Pruett is in good shape. This is the battle back with Zanardi. 5 minutes to go. Zanardi trying to get some more valuable championship points from Boesel.
They don't need to wind him into a frenzy because the last thing he needs to do is scrape this thing down a wall again.
Look at him locking up that inside front again. That's Mark Blundell right behind him. Blundell is 8th, Ray Hull is 9th, Richie Hearn is 10th. You don't need to make another mistake. You're exactly right, Neil. At this late stage in the race, take what you can and just go home and forget today.
Scott Pruett has a margin of 2.1 seconds over Greg Moore, who's 1.5 seconds clear of Michael Andretti. You have to hold your breath sometimes when you watch Zanardi. Look at the sun in the western horizon. Derek mentioned quite accurately that is the driver's point of view.
See how difficult it is to pass the driver? Zanardi is probably 2 seconds a lap faster than Raoul Boesel. He catches him, but you can't just squeeze by. You can't drive over the top of him. And in a straight line here, that's the Ford engine with Boesel against the Honda of Zanardi. But when you accelerate from a low second gear corner, Boesel pulls 3, 4, or 5 car lengths, and you simply cannot make up that in the braking zone.
Greg Moore now responding, a 38.4 last time round. Scott Pruett a 38.6.
Back to the leaders. Scott Pruett is in control, but Greg Moore is beginning to run him down. It was over 3 seconds earlier. Now it's down to 2.
That's the gap, second to third. You'll see the leader at the top of screen. There's 1 and 2. That's position 2, Greg Moore. 2 seconds adrift from Scott Pruett. 0.2 of a second quicker last time round than this man in the foreground, Scott Pruett.
Remember what we just saw with Zanardi. Catching is one thing, trying to make a pass is another thing. With that blue car driven by Greg Moore, they started the season with a Lola. They went testing. They spent the whole winter trying to develop the Lola, realized they didn't like it, they prefer the Rainier. They just had this car delivered before they came here to Australia, and they had a total of 250 miles on that car before it started today's race.
Next time round, the white flag will be shown, indicating to the drivers there will be just 1 lap to go. 4.5 kilometres. The leader at the moment is Scott Pruett. Last time round, the margin was 2 seconds. Comes through the Honda hairpin.
So Scott Pruett, who has been here 5 different times, full of confidence. He's always been successful here. He was 3rd in 95. He was 2nd last year when he chased Jimmy Vasser all the way.
Moore's catching him, 1.6 seconds, but I don't know that he's going to have enough time.
I don't think he's going to catch. He might catch him. I think it'll be very difficult to make that pass, but they're on the last lap. The white flag is out. Will Scott Pruett bag another win? He just got married at 12 o'clock midnight on January the 1st, so it's in the 1997 tax season. His wife Judy is here. His wife Judy is a therapist. Don't make a mistake now, Scott. Greg Moore is still ever closer. He is getting closer to Scott Pruett. So the Patrick Racing team, who have been so successful over the years in IndyCar racing, now trying to hang on with half a lap to go, and Greg Moore is closing. Scott Pruett being extra careful. You have to be extra careful. Don't throw it all away. Through the Foster chicane for the last time. Down through to dime turn. There's Greg Moore. It's been survival of the fittest here. We saw Scott Pruett make contact earlier, and look at Greg Moore now. Now they're down to the MCI S's. The Honda hairpin is next. Honda hairpin is next. Then give her a blast down this long front straight. Don't miss any gears.
One more lap. There's going to be one more lap. They've beaten the time allocated, Derek, so they've been shown the white flag for the second time. That's a bit bizarre. So Greg Moore gets another opportunity to reduce the gap, and he's responding. 0.9 of a second last time through. Pruett's lap time was a 38.8. Moore a 38.1. He's taken 0.7 of a second out of him.
I do believe Scott Pruett was taking it easy, thinking that was the last lap. However, the time is still a little bit before 5 o'clock, so now Greg Moore is right behind Scott Pruett. I don't think Scott Pruett will give him any room at all. It's going to be difficult. There's a nice cushion there from Scott Pruett.
This is a potential second CART IndyCar win for Scott Pruett. His first win at Michigan in 1995. He picked up a pole last year, but he didn't grab a win. He's been fourth, he's been third, he's been second on the Gold Coast in successive years, and he is half a lap away. That's 2.25 kilometres from potential victory on the Gold Coast in 1997 for the Sunbelt Indy Carnival 1997.
And this is experience versus youth. Scott Pruett, 37 years of age. Been around racing cars a long, long time. Greg Moore, 22 years old. Just starting his long, long career in racing cars, and what a display he has put on. Pruett locks up that left one, and he goes a bit wide coming out of the Honda hairpin. But Greg Moore is not close enough. So Scott Pruett will get to taste the champagne from Australia tonight, because he takes the checkered flag. And Neil, that certainly was survival of the fittest. Wife Judy, thrilled to see the result of that long, long day's work.
Just 0.6 of a second between them, first to second. That was an amazing run to the flag. Moore took another 2/10 out on that last lap, but couldn't get there.
So the Brahma team that moved from Barry Green over to Patrick Racing to make a two-car team with Bozell comes up successful. Scott Pruett, with Michael Andretti, a great run to third, Gilles de Ferran's fifth.
Welcome back, and time has beaten all of us, but Scotty Pruett has beaten his rivals after 57 laps at Indy Carnival 97. He has finally nailed one. Fourth, second, fourth, third, second, and now first. Greg Moore finished second, and the little wiggle from Scotty. Andretti third, great run from Zanardi to get fourth. Andretti, though, retains the championship lead in the Kart World Series, and that's the vital thing for the Newman Haas team. Next week on